In this video, I want to take a look at the third text, the Middoth text, and I'd like to just review some of the translations and give a bit of commentary concerning some of the areas where students are no doubt likely to slip up on. So we're just going to look at it piece by piece. Forgive me if there are any background sounds due to the proximity or the location of this particular video. There may be a few muffled noises in the background. Just ignore those. So this is basically the text. We'll take it piece by piece, section by section. We begin here. Kol hanichnasim lahar habayit. That's all those who enter the Har Habayit. Har Habayit is literally means the mountain of the house. Something like that, but we understand it, or we know that it basically means the Temple Mount. That's what it refers to. So in cases like this in your translation, you would translate the Temple Mount, but you may want to put in a footnote where it means the mountain of the house. That's what it literally means. So you put down in the footnote, lit, mountain of the house. Nichnasin derech yamin u mekifin veyotzein derech smol. So they would enter through the right, and they would circle round, and they would go out through the left, or by way of. That's how you want to understand derech in this particular context. And this is talking about how you would enter the temple. You'd go up. If you think back to the Huldah gates, you'd go up the three right-hand gates onto the Temple Mount. When you came back, you would come out of the other two gates on the other side, and this would maintain the flow around the temple. These phrases here, this is a participle, yotzin, with the nun ending, which is typical of Mishnaic Hebrew and not of biblical Hebrew. And the participle in this type of context is really used to describe a continual habitual action, something that happened in the past. So you want to translate this something like they used to, or they would do this, or they would do that. So they would circle round and they would come out to the left. Chutz memishe yiro'o davar. Apart from, chutz me comes together, this chutz me, and it means apart from. Not outside of, but apart from. So everybody would take this circuit mentioned before, apart from me, apart from somebody, that something happened to him, or happens to him, a thing or a matter. So yir'o is, yiroa is happened, that's third masculine singular, and this one here, this vav here is the object suffix. So something that a thing happened to him. And if you fall into this category of something happening to you, you'll see what it is in a moment. Shehu, then he would circle around the left, or circle about the left. So everyone normally goes up the right one unless there was a problem with you. We'll find out what those are in a second. Then you would go into the left gate where everybody else was going into the right. You'd be going into the left against the flow. Malacha mekif lesmol. Malacha is literally, if we're going to translate it, it means what's to you. But this particular phrase, it should be translated as what's wrong with you, or what's up with you. In the book of Jonah chapter 6, we find this same expression when the captain comes to Jonah and he said, what's wrong with you? Malacha, why are you sleeping? And that's basically the same meaning which it has here. So this is something, a question which people would ask when they saw an individual trying to go up the left-hand gate. Malacha mekif lesmol. What's wrong with you? You're going round, you're circling to the left. Now we've got his reply, she'ani avel, or she'ani aval. She, in this context, and I mentioned this before, I think, in the meeting we had, but she, don't try and force the meaning of that or as the relative pronoun on she all the time, because oftentimes in our text you'll see that it means because. And in this case, it does mean because. And here his answer is, because I am mourning. And this is the reply from somebody who hears that this second individual is mourning. Hashochen beveit hazeh, the dweller in this house. That should be quite easy from biblical Hebrew. But the dweller, who is the dweller in the house? Well, you're at the temple, the Beit HaMikdash. Who is the dweller? Well, it's God himself. So this is basically a euphemism for God, and it's going to be a blessing. So we have Hashochen beveit hazeh, yinachemcha, may he be kind to you, may he be merciful to you, or may he comfort you. And this is, at least from biblical Hebrew, you'd know it's an imperfect form. The kaf on the end is the object. It's an imperfect form. We don't have a specific jussive form in Mishnaic Hebrew and many times in biblical Hebrew for the third masculine singular. But this, contextually, we would read as a jussive. So it would say, may he, that's the dweller of the house, that's God himself. You would say, may he be kind to you, or something like that. May he show you mercy. And then we go after this semicolon. This now is a second answer. So the first person was mourning, and the second person, or another person, might say, she'ani menudeh, or she'ani menudah. And here it's saying, because I am rejected, or I have been outcast from the community. It's quite a strong phrase, but it's basically some kind of excommunication that's going on. So he's excommunicated from the community, so he has to go up through the left-hand gate. And here's what they say in return. Hashochen beveit hazeh, the dweller of this house, yiten belibam vayikravucha. Now here I need to see if I can, I don't know if I can draw. I probably can't draw on this screen anyway. Here I need to explain that what the blessing is, or what they're requesting here, is that God would put it in their hearts, libcham, that's the community. So maybe God will do something, he would touch their hearts, so that they would draw, that's yikarvu is third masculine plural, cha, they would draw this poor individual back into the community. So that's what they're saying. So the emphasis in this case is on the community being merciful and drawing this individual in. Divrei Rabbi Me'er, and this opens up the next section, which quotes a rabbi, Rabbi Me'er, and Rabbi Me'er, he's quoting somebody else here. Amar lo Rabbi Yossi. So Me'er is quoting Yossi, and this is what he says. Asitem ka'ilu ivru elav et hadin. So what he's saying here is, you have made it as if ka'ilu, they have transgressed against him, the individual, the deen, the law, a particular judgment. So he's saying you've the way in which you've described it previously, it's as though the community is in the wrong and they've done something wrong in rejecting him. But he's saying now, Eile hashochen beveit hazeh, the dweller of this house, yiten belibcha. So may God touch this individual's heart, vetishma lidivrei chavrecha, that he would hear the words of the congregation or of the community, vayikarvucha, and they will draw you near. So what he's saying here in this second part is basically that the onus should fall on the individual, and this individual basically needs to listen to the words of the community, repent, so that he would then come back into the community. What we see in this particular text is a reflection of certainly Matthew 18:15-17, which speaks of, if your brother sins, go and show him his fault in private. If he listens to you, you have won your brother. But if he doesn't listen to you, take 1 or 2 more with you, so that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every fact may be confirmed. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen to even the church, let him be to you as a Gentile and a tax collector, which is to say, may he be excluded from the community. And that individual, if that happens to somebody, then he would find himself in a situation of this individual, and he would need to go up to the temple through the left-hand side and be asked these relatively embarrassing questions. We now go to the further descriptions of inside the temple, what's inside. So you've got lepanim mimenu, which means inside of it. That's what this phrase means. Inside from it, literally, but you're saying inside it, and we're talking about the Temple Mount. Soreg, gvoa esrim tafachim, which is a soreg is some kind of a lattice work, a low fence type thing, which is its height. And here you'd see gvoa. This hay, if this were a pointed biblical text, then you would no doubt see a mapik, a little dot inside of the hay, indicating that the hay is in fact the third feminine singular. It's an object reference. So you'd say a soreg and its height, es asra tefachim, which is 10 handbreadths. So there's no need for you to write tefachim in just transliterate it. It makes more sense to translate it as 10 handbreadths, and that's how high it was. Veshlosha asra partzot hayu bo, which is to say there were 13 gaps or breaches in it. She partzuam malkei yaven, which here the she is functioning as a relative. They broke through them, the kings of Greece. And this is talking or making a reference to the Hashmonean revolt, when the temple was broken through and ransacked. Vechazru vegadruam, which means and they returned, which is to say, I think it was Shimon, the one of the Maccabees, returned, and when they returned, vegazru kanegdan shlosha esra hishtachvuyot, and so when they returned, they fenced it in and they decreed against them 13 prostrations. Hishtachaveh is a biblical Hebrew word that we see. This is a slight development of the form, but it's nevertheless the same word. The root is actually chet vav hey, and there is a degree of metathesis which takes place. So it's hishtachvuyot, mishtachavea. You may see it like that in biblical Hebrew. So basically, they decreed, because of the 13 breaches, they decreed somewhere in the worship or in the service, 13 prostrations. That's what this word here means. Or 13 stages of worship, 13 positions of worship in memory of these 13 breaches. Same phrase again, lifanim mimenu, which simply means inside it. It's going back to another description. Hachel gvoa asra eser emot. And the chayil is the rampart, and its height, esra imot, which is 10 cubits. So inside it, the chayil, which was 10 cubits high. V'shtem esrei ma'alot hayusham. And there were 12 steps there. Shtem esrei ma'alot steps hayusham, that were there. Rom me'ale chetzi ema, which is to say the height of a step, ma'ale, was half a cubit. V'sharacha chetzi ema, and its extension, which is the flat part of the step, because steps go up like this and across, up and across. So it's talking about the height and then the extension. It's sharacha. that was chetzi ama, that was half a cubit. V'kol ma'alot shehayu sham, and each of the steps that were there, rom, height, ma'aleh, chetzi ima, a height of half a cubit, v'shelecha, chetzi ima, and its outstretched part, the part you step on, its extension, half a cubit. Chutzme, we see this phrase again, chutzme, which means apart from, except from, shel ha'ulam, apart from that of the porch, which is an area of the temple, porch or large hall. Some of you I know are influenced by modern Hebrew, where ulam simply describes a hall, but you have to be very careful in interpreting Mishnaic Hebrew strictly via the lens of modern Hebrew. Kol ha'petachim shehayu sham, all of the openings, petachim, shehayu sham, that were there, govahen, esrim ima, their height, this is this govahen, this is the object suffix referring back to the openings, esrim ama, their height was 20 cubits, verochavan, and their width or breadth, eser amot, and that was 10 cubits. Their width, 10 cubits. Chutzmi, once again, two parts to the expression chutzmi, apart from, chutzmi shel ulam, apart from the porch, once again, which was designed slightly differently. Kol ha'petachim shehayu sham, all of the openings that were there, hayu lehem deletot. I said before, haya le means reflects the verb to have. So they had, hayula means they had, deletot, they had doors. All of the openings that were there had doors, chutz mishel ulam, apart from, once again, the porch. So we move on. Kol ha'sha'arim shehayu sham, all of the gates that were there, hayu lehem shekufot. Again, we see this combination of haya le, which is a form of the verb to have. So that means they had. So you look at this part of the phrase here, hen, they, hayala, they had, shekufot, which are lintels. Lintels or arches of some sort. Chutzme sha'ar tadi. Apart from chutzme sha'ar tadi, the tadi gate, the gate of tadi. Shehayu sham, and there were there, shtei avenim mutot ze al gabe ze, zo al gabe zo. Sorry. So, apart from the tadi gate, and there were there two stones that were leaned, and this is probably going to be a hofal verb. Nun tet hey, nun tet yud would be the root, that were leaning this one on the back of this one. So it was kind of a structure, I'm assuming, where there was one this way, and there was another that way. Al gabe is gav, is a back or on top of, and we'll see that. We're going to see that in a couple times in the readings that are going to come. Al gabe zo. So literally, this means this one on the top of this one. So they were leaning, but they were leaning, and that's what that verb tells us. Kol ha'sha'arim shehayu sham, all of the gates that were there. Nishtanu lihiyot shel zahav. They were changed to be gold. Nishtanu. Nishtanu would be the root of Shin Nun Hey or Shin Nun Yud. So you've got nishtanu, they were changed. This is probably a nitpa'el verb, which would give us the nun. So they were changed, lihiot shel zahab. They were changed to be gold. Chutz misha'ar Nikanor. Apart from the Nikanor gate. Again, we keep seeing this chutzme, apart from. Sha'arei, this is in construct form, Nikanor, the gates of Nikanor, the Nikanor gates. Mipnei she ne'aseh behem nes. Because there was performed with them a miracle. Nes, a wonderful thing that was done. Miracle, nes is miracle, certainly in modern Hebrew. And basically what had happened was, the story goes that Nicanor actually, or had the 2 bronze gates made in Egypt, and he put them on a ship, and he sailed with them back to Israel. And on the way back, due to a storm, they had to throw one of the gates into the sea, and they were about to throw the second one into the sea, and Nicanor said, no, if you throw that in, you have to throw me in with it. So they didn't throw it in, and when they arrived at the shores of the land of Israel, they found that the gate which they had thrown off washed up to shore. So that was the miracle which enabled them to keep both of the gates. Veyesh omrin, and there are those who say, that's how you translate that. There is saying, or that's the literal reading. Omrin, you've got the nun, which is something that we see in Mishneh Hebrew again instead of the mem. There are those who say, Mipnei she hanechushtan mazhiv. There are those say it's because Mipnei she works together. Mipnei she. That is one expression which means because. Mipnei she. Nehushtan is bronze, and there are those who say that it's bronze, mazhiv. And this word here you can see, if you know Hebrew, which I'm sure you do, you know the word gold is zahav, tzadi hey bet. And this is basically the noun which is put into a hif'il form, which is a causative form. So it kind of like causes it to be gold. But the way in which we understand it is that it would give the appearance of gold, or it would glow like gold. And that's really how you want to understand this. So the Nicanor gates, they weren't changed to being gold because they gave the appearance of gold. They were obviously a very, very shiny type of bronze. And we continue. Kol hakotlim shehayu sham, which means all of the walls that were there. Kotel means wall, and that's in fact the term, the modern Hebrew term. If you go to Israel and you want to describe the western wall, you normally call it hakotel. So it says all of the walls that were there, hayu govahim, they were of a height, or they were tall. They were tall. Chutzme, apart from, once again we see chutzme, kotel mizrachi, the eastern wall. Shehakohen hasoref et hapara, because the priest, again, she we're understanding as because instead of that. Because the priest that burned the para, the cow, and this was from last week's text, you'd know that the reference to the cow is specifically to the red heifer that was used in the sacrificing and setting free procedure. The cow, the red heifer, the priest, who burned the red heifer, so the subject is the priest, Omed Bahar HaMischa, used to stand on the Mount of Olives. And that's another word, Mischa, is a word that means, many of you translate it as anointing, but the term is for what you anoint with oil, and it's another term for the Mount of Olives. So he used to stand on the Mount of Olives, v'mitkaven, and he would turn, or he would turn himself. Kaven means to direct, and as it's in a reflexive binyan, a hitpa'el, in all likelihood, he would turn himself and see petro shel hechal, the opening of the temple, b'sha'ah hezit hadam, at the hour of the sprinkling of the blood. And what this is basically saying is that there was a need for the priest who was with the red heifer on the Mount of Olives. He would need to see, a gate would have to be slightly lower, and he would need to be able to see the process that was going on so that he could time what he was doing at the same time that the blood was being sprinkled at the temple. So the priest on the Mount of Olives needed to be in visual contact with the temple. Haziyat Hadam is the sprinkling. That's the verbal form of a noun, the sprinkling of the blood. And this is sha'ah, and that's just a construct form with the tav. Let's see if there's anything else here. Everything else was pretty much self-explanatory, so we'll move on to the last paragraph. Ezrat HaNashim הייתה אורך 135. The court of the women was length 135, and we're talking about no measurement is given, but we are to assume that it is emot, cubits, emot. So most of you got that. That was one of the questions I asked. It was 135 cubits long, so you'd have to insert cubits in brackets to make it make sense. Al rochav 135. Al here, and again, this is something which many of you are going to have to stop doing, and that is look at al and only associate it with the word upon. If you look up the meaning of the word al, it has a great deal of meanings, one of which could be concerning or regarding. So please don't just settle for the basic meaning of these words and try and get a better translation. So concerning the width, 135, and again, you would need to put in brackets cubits, because that was implied from before. Ve'arba leshechot hayu, ve'arba mikso'otea. And there were 4 chambers that were on its 4 corners. 4 chambers there were on its 4 corners. So that's 4, and those are the corners of it. Shel 40 ema, and that is 4 chambers on the 4 corners that were 40 by 40 cubits. And we've got the singular of cubits, so you may have the singular, which is representing a collective value, or you may have a plural, and I think the two are interchanged quite easily. Velo hayu mekorot, and literally this means that they were not beamed, and the interpretation is, or the translation is, that they had no roofs. So when it says mekorot, loch mekorot, it means it wasn't beamed, but the nuance is that they were not roofed. They didn't have a roof to them. Now, going back here to this phrase, arba'im, this is another one of those phrases where in your translations you would put 40, arba'im, 40 by 40 cubits, but in the footnote you would write literally 40 cubits, just to show me that you are, interpreting it correctly, making the right leap with respect to the interpretation. And for this word here, mekorot, the root you're looking for is kuf resh yud. And it's a puar participle in this particular case. Vekach hen atidot lehiot. And thus, vekach, they were destined, atidot, destined to be. So they were not beamed, and they were destined to be. They were supposed to remain like that. Unroofed, unbeamed, unroofed. There was never ever going to be a plan to put roofs on these. And this is because, as we're going to see, it's a reference here to the third temple. The third temple is not supposed to have these particular rooms covered. And so he's now going to adduce that, or bring evidence for this, from the book of Ezekiel. So we go on shene'emar. Make a note of this expression, shene'emar, because this basically introduces a quote. It introduces a quote. So when you see shene'emar here and in other places throughout the rest of the semester, you'll see the next thing that comes is an open quotation mark. As it was said. That was said. Veyotzieni el hachatzer hachitzona. So they bring him out onto the external court. This is Ezekiel being brought out into the external court. Ve'ya'avireni, and he brought me el arba'at miktsoei hachatzer, and he made me pass by, or brought me unto the four corners of the court. Vehine, and behold, chatzer b'miktsoa hachatzer, and behold, a court in the corner of the court. That's as we kind of literally want to understand. Chatzer miktsoa hachatzer. So we're saying a court in the corner of a court in the corner of the court. And that basically, when it's doubled like that, you've got the sense of every. So he's repeated it twice, and it basically means there was a court in the corner of every court. A small court in the corner of every court. Be'arbat miktzoot hachatzer, in the four... Oop, I didn't jump the line, sorry. Be'arbat miktzoot hachatzer, and here it's saying, and in the four corners of the court, chatzorot katurot, which are four enclosures, four kind of like walled off areas. And this is Yechzekel, Ezekiel 46, Memvav 21, Kaf Aleph 2:22. And here's a short explanation which they're given as well. Ve'ein keturot, which we see in the text. And it's saying, Ve'ein keturot, eile. And this here you'd translate, or you'd gain the understanding as saying, that is to say. So what they're trying to do now is explain this particular word that's being used. Eile she'enan mekurot. So this, when they use this phrase here, what they basically mean is there is no roof. And that's as they have interpreted it. So we've got a short text there explaining why these four mini-courts, sub-courts were unroofed. And it's because the book of Ezekiel says that they shouldn't be in the third temple. So they're going to remain like that until the third temple is constructed. Umahayu mishmashot. And this is going back to each of these four courts. What were they used for? Umahayu, and what were they being used for? What was their use? Dromit Mizrachit, which is to say, Drom is south and Mizrach is east, so that's southeast, the southeast court. Hi hayta leshechet ha-nazirim. This was the chamber or the rooms of the Nazarites. Nazirim, the Nazarites, which we read about in Numbers. Shesham ha-nazrim mevashlim et shlemehem. And it says so that there the Nazarites mevashel, bashel, cook or boiled et the offerings. So in this room, the Nazarites were boiling their offerings. U megachlin et sa'aran, which is to say they were shaving their hair. So the Nazarites, I'm assuming at the end of the Nazarite vow you may have had for a few years, you would, after you grew your hair, you would shave your hair and make an offering. And there's a reference to this, I believe, in the New Testament, because Paul does this. He takes, when he returns to Jerusalem, he does this with a couple of other individuals. Meshlachechin tachat hadud. And they would take their hair and they would send it, or they would cast it, shalach, meshalechin, tachat hadud, underneath the pot. So they would be both boiling their offerings and they would be taking their hair and throwing it under the pot so that it would burn. We carry on with the distance of these small rooms. Mizrachit tzfonit, that's northeast, the northeastern room. Hi hayta leshechet dir ha'etzim. This was a chamber of the shed of the wood. So there was in this place there was a small shed, a dir, a small kind of like storehouse, wooden storehouse, shack type thing, ha'etzim, of wood. Now, some of you looked up the word etzim and it came up with trees, but we're not dealing with trees here, but we're just talking about wood, so to speak. Shesham kohanim ba'alei mumim mitlaim be'etzim. What's going on there? So there, the priests, literally, ba'alei mumim, the owners of defects. So you'd put that in a footnote, but up here you would say the priests who had defects, physical defects. So there was something wrong with the priests and they had to limit their duties. They could only do certain things. They couldn't go into the Holy of Holies, let's say, but had to remain outside. So these priests were metaleim be'etzim, which means inspecting the wood. Now we've got here the root talah from tola'at, which also means worm. So you might want to translate it that they were deworming the wood. Be'etzim. The bet belongs to the verb here. So they were inspecting or deworming the wood. She, this she, once again, is because, not that. Because every wood or every piece of wood that was found, shenimtza bo tola'at, that was found in it a worm, pasul me'al gabei hamizbeach. Every piece of wood in which a worm was found was disqualified from being on the top of the altar. So it would have been unclean, and you don't use that type of wood to make your sacrifices. Another room, sfonit ma'aravit, which means northwestern. Hi hayta leshechet ha-mitzorain, which is the chamber of the lepers, chamber of those who had leprosy. And I'm going to assume here that this was a chamber in which the individuals were sent to once they had been cured of leprosy. They'd have to be inspected for that leprosy, and they may have had a chamber here where they would come and the priest would actually inspect them there. That's my theory. Ma'aravit dromit, southwestern, Ma'arav and Drom, southwestern chamber. Amar Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Shachakti, Mahayita, meshameshet. I forgot what she was being used for. It's just kind of weird they'd put this in there, but it's basically saying that a rabbi, it's obviously an old tradition, this particular rabbi has forgotten what it was used for. Abba Shaul Amar, be careful here because Abba, which is translated in the New Testament as meaning father or daddy, as many preachers say, Abba here is also a personal name. So this individual is called Abba Shaul. And he says, Sham hayu, there were, notnin yain veshemen. There they were putting or placing the wine and the oil. Again, be very careful how you understand Natan, and perhaps the biggest lesson out of all of this for most of you is that you shouldn't be settling on the first interpretation of a particular word and trying to squeeze it in there, but make sure when you look at Joustro that you explore many of the words' possible meanings. So they put there the wine and the oil. Vehi hayta nikrat leshechet beit shminiya. And she, nikrat, was called, kuf resh aleph tav, and she was called, and it was known as the chamber, the shechet beit shminiya, the house, the chamber of the house of the oil. So it was obviously given that name a long time ago, and it may have lost that name, and obviously some people have forgotten what it was actually used for. And now we actually jump to the women's court. There's nothing explicit that says that, but that's clearly the sense here. Vechalka haita bereshona. And at first, bereshona, and at first, chalaka haita, it was smooth or empty. Those are possible meanings of it. And by that, when it says smooth or empty, it was obviously it was just flat and there was nothing else there. But we're going to see as we go on here, vehekifua ketzotstra, and they encircled it with a balcony. So they encircled vehekifua, that's the object talking about the balcony. They encircled it with a balcony, not a balcony, a railing, some kind of railing around the balcony. This word, this is hekif, third masculine plural ending vav, but this is the object suffix hey. And this word here, some of you may have had a bit of trouble locating it. It basically means balcony. And if you go here, if you look at this word, don't be fooled with the kaf because it's not a preposition meaning like. So you have to actually look up the word kaf tzadi vav tzadi resh hey, or kaf tzadi vav tzadi tet resh hey. So you'd first need to go and look at page 663 where you will find this word, and from there you are directed to look up another word, gizuztra, which actually defines the balcony. And it's that other word which we actually find on page 228 which defines this word as a balcony. So first it was smooth and there was nothing there, but then they made a balcony around it. Shehanashim ro'ot me lemal'an veha-anashim me lamatan. So that the women were then looking above and the men were looking below, so that they were not mingling. So it's obviously some kind of a structure that separated men from women. Kedei shelo yihyu me'uravim, in order that they would not be intermingling. So it would be separating the men from the women. Kedei she, important construct. Kedei she, again, kedei plus she, all of that is one's construct. In order that, that's what it means. Lo yihyu, they would not be me uravim. They would not be mingling. Arav is the same word that we see for Orev in the book of Exodus describing swarms, but it means mingling together, and that's the plural, masculine plural ending. ו-15 מעלות עולות מתוכה לעזרת ישראל מעזרת הנשים. And here we've got 15 ma'alot, 15 steps. Olot went up. Metocha, in its midst. That's in the middle of the court of the women. And you'll see this in the picture of the temple I sent you. There are some round steps. You'll see them going from the court of the women, going up into the temple itself. Mitocha, in its midst. Le'ezrat Israel, to the court of Israel. Azra means the court. This is in construct form, hence the tav. The court of Israel. Somebody put the help of Israel, but it's not that. It's Azra, which means court. Up to the court of Israel. Me'ezrat hanashim, from the court of the women. So the steps go up to the court of Israel from the court of the women. Kaneged 15 shir hama'alot shebetehillim. And this is corresponding with, kaneged, as before, or corresponding with the 15 shir hama'alot, songs of ascent, shebetehillim, or telim. With this word shebetehillim, this is the word tehillim. But if you spell out the word tehillim, you'll find that the hey is normally tav hey yud lamed yud mem. The hey is caught between the vocal shva, which is normally under the tav, and the chirik yud here. And as a result, this hey then acquiesces and disappears, certainly in pronunciation. And we see this exactly same process in the change or in the development of the word Yehoshua into Yeshua. So Yehoshua, we've got the hey of Yehoshua, which stands between the shva, Yehoshua, of the yud shva, hey, and you've got the vav of the ua. So you've got the hey between those two sounds, and ultimately Yehoshua becomes Yeshua. And it happens in other words as well. Those who've taken biblical Hebrew with me would know, would have other examples of that too. So we'd expect to see Tehillim, but because of that linguistic development, it turns into Telim. So the Shir HaMa'alot, the songs of the ascent in Tehillim, there are 15 of them. She'alehem haliv'im omdim bashir. And it says, and on them, because upon them, probably because here, upon them, upon the steps, the Levites used to stand in song. And what this basically means, and this is basically the tradition that we see, that the Levites, as they went up to the court of Israel, they would step on a step and they would say one of the songs of ascent. Then they would go up onto another one and recite another song of ascent, and another one and another song of ascent, all the way up the 15 steps into the temple. And this is just into the court of Israel, and this is just a tradition, but that's where we have the corresponding numbers, number 15. Velo hayu trutot, and they were not, this is describing the steps, they were not straight, or they were not abrupt, which is to say they were not oblong steps. They were a different shape. Ele mukafot kachetzi goran egula, which is to say they were not straight or abrupt, but they were rounded, like half of a threshing circle. Goran agula is a threshing circle, so they were basically semicircled in shape. And if you go and you take a look at the diagrams that I sent you, you'd see the 15 steps which were in the shape of a semicircle. And that's it. So you can go back and take a look at this. So I will try and do a video like this for each of the texts that we are reading, so you can go back over it at your own leisure. I found myself just making the same corrections time and time again, and I think it's much better if I'm able to address it in one video. So this will be loaded up, and the others will be loaded up as well on the respective units of E360. If there are any questions, if you don't feel I've answered anything specifically enough, then by all means send me an email, or we'll discuss it in one of our live sessions.